The rain stopped about midnight. The rain-soaked night had turned chilly, and I shivered in the chill air. I was not the only one shivering. A half-dozen people huddled around a fire outside the hall which we had built up in anticipation of a long night. The fire's light did not reach into the surrounding darkness, and only cast a dim glow into the hall where I lay on a bed of straw. I lay awake for a long time, staring at the thatched ceiling above me and thinking about my situation. The hall was cold and dank, and the smell of old straw made my eyes burn and my nose run. I sniffed back the tears that threatened to spill down my cheeks. My nose ran a lot these days, and my eyes were swollen and sore. I touched my cheek and realized it had been scabbed over again by a hard crust of dried blood. My lip was also swollen from the beating I had taken. I remembered the face of my attacker, though I could not recall his name. He was a thick-shouldered man who was quick and strong. He had grabbed me by my shirt, and when I tried to punch him, he struck me so hard in the mouth that I lost consciousness. I came to as my head rested on a stone floor in a dark room somewhere. I lifted my head and looked around. I was alone in the room. I was lying on my back with my hands tied behind my back. I saw my boots a few feet away. There were no windows or doors, and the only light came from the glow of the fire. I glanced around the room, but there was no sign of a door. It was as if I was lying inside a stone box. I thought about making a run for it, but it was pitch black and I had no idea how far it would be to the hall. I would surely be caught. I was sure of this because I knew who had me. My stomach clenched with fear. I tried to scream, but nothing came out except a groan. I heard footsteps approaching. A man entered the room, carrying a torch. It was a small, smoky torch that barely lit the room, but I could see the man's face clearly. It was the same man who had captured me earlier today, only he wore a different set of clothes now. He was younger, with blonde hair and blue eyes. His cheeks were flushed from the cold, and his breath steamed in front of his face. He held the torch up to look at my face, and the flickering light reflected off his blue eyes. He said something, but I couldn't make out what he was saying, because he spoke so softly and because my head throbbed so badly. He leaned forward and spoke into my ear, his voice even softer. He kept his face close to mine, speaking as if he were trying to calm me down. He spoke in a quiet voice that seemed to be filled with compassion. He said something that sounded like, "Do not be afraid, brother." He paused and cocked his head sideways as if listening for something, then leaned closer to me again and repeated himself in a whisper. He spoke quickly now, his voice tense and urgent. Then he pulled back and began speaking louder and more rapidly. His tone changed as he spoke with urgency, but now there was no trace of kindness in his voice. He seemed angry now and spoke quickly, in an angry tone that rose in pitch with every word. I did not understand what he was saying, but his anger and intensity frightened me more than anything else he had said or done yet. The man leaned back and began pacing around the small space. He moved quickly, but he always returned to my side. His eyes never left me and his body was tense, as if waiting for something to happen. The torch flickered in his hand as he moved around the room, casting his shadow across me like a moving demon. I stared at the shadow that moved across me, waiting for it to do something, but it never moved beyond its position in front of my face. The man continued to pace, and his eyes were locked onto mine. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally stopped and stared at me again. He had a strange smile on his face, one that made no sense to me. It was not threatening or menacing. It was as if he had been expecting me to react to him somehow. It was an expression I could not decipher, but I found it unsettling and frightening. He turned his back to me and walked back toward the door, still clutching the torch. He paused at the door and looked over his shoulder at me for a long moment. His eyes seemed to be searching for something in my eyes, but I could not understand what it was. I wondered if it was some kind of test or a trap to see if I would reveal any information. He walked back to me, looking down into my face for another moment, then left the room without speaking to me. The door opened slowly, and a firelight flickered into the room. The man carrying the torch turned and stepped into the room, walking away from me and leaving the door open. The hall was filled with torches that cast flickering shadows along the walls. Men stood around the fire talking quietly while they warmed their hands, and others were preparing food by the light of the flames. There was no sign of my captors, and no sign of the man who had captured me earlier that day. I was still lying on my back in the dark room, alone with nothing but my own thoughts. I heard a noise behind me and sat up straight in fright. I was alone in the room, but my heart began pounding and I felt the cold sweat break out on my brow.